So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, we'll get started then. Hi everyone who's here. Yeah, well, as Bethany says, we're here to talk about our Caribbean dive and sail adventures for Broadreach. And tonight, our passage plan for this evening is to just give you a quick overview about Broadreach and our Caribbean adventures in particular. Then we'll try and answer some frequently asked questions that we get a lot, and hopefully that'll clear up some stuff for a lot of people. But then we'll also have a good time to do some Q&A, so feel free to ask questions and let us know what's on your mind. Bethany, where did you want the questions?
Yeah, so there's a Q&A box, so you can leave your questions there. If you think of questions during the presentation, go ahead and submit them. And if we answer them during, then that's fine. Otherwise, we'll get to those at the end.
Yeah, lovely. Great, so yeah, ask away. But yeah, today, let's introduce ourselves. Yeah, my name's Claire Hughes. I'm the Caribbean Director for Broadreach. I organise and plan on all of our programs down in the Caribbean and kind of oversee everything. I get to spend my summer down in St. Martin and on boats and even go diving with students every so often as well. So I'm a really good person to ask about, especially diving. I'm a dive instructor and all things Caribbean.
So my name's Fran and I am kind of our world dive coordinator here at Broadreach, but I have a deep love for the Caribbean. It's kind of where I started out with Broadreach as a dive instructor and a skipper as well. So I'm another great person to answer questions, and we're happy to be chatting through our programs with you guys tonight. A little bit about us. We run small group international adventures, so around 12 students on each program. But tonight we are going to focus on our Caribbean boat-based programs in particular, and kind of the different options that are there. And like we said, answer some frequently asked questions around that. We have been around since 1993. We started out with our first program, which was a sea kayaking trip. And in this picture, you can actually see our current director and owner. He was a student on that first program, has been with Broadreach for many years, and is now kind of running things around here. So I think we're going to go straight into a little bit about our trips and COVID for the summer.
Yeah, so we thought we'd just start with COVID and kind of get it out of the way. I think it's a good thing. One thing to know about our trips, we are requiring the COVID vaccination. We are requiring both staff and students to be fully vaccinated this year. It's something that we feel is safer for everyone, but also helps with international travel. We're finding a lot of the islands that we go to and the places that we visit are also requiring that people be vaccinated, and will only let you on land if you're vaccinated, so it's easier for travel in general. As well as that, we currently have testing requirements in St. Martin, and that may well change. And so it's due to change very soon. And so we will keep you up to date in the run up to summer with the latest testing requirements. It's likely we'll require something before you travel. It could just be a self-administered antigen test. It's a good idea before travel to do that. And it's something we'll keep on top of and keep you updated about as we go into the summer. Again, pre-program precautions are constantly changing and evolving. We did kind of encourage people to self-isolate or self-distance themselves from people and kind of take a bit more stock of who they were interacting with in the run-up to the trip. And then on-program procedures too, some of the questions that we get asked are about masking and testing and things. We currently on boats particularly don't require that students wear masks. We may do if we go to land and interact with people on land. It's dependent on the island we're visiting, and testing as well. Any testing that's required on the trip, either between islands or for coming back to the US, it's good to know that we'll take care of that for students, whatever those requirements are. It's something we're constantly keeping on top of, and we'll communicate that to families and students as we go into the summer. It's a constantly changing landscape. So let's talk a little bit about the programs. Don't want to get into too much detail here because it is all on the website, but an overview of what we kind of offer. First, start with 12-day programs. We do diving and sailing for 12 days. These are our shortest programs that we have in the Caribbean. We do that scuba and sailing for both high schoolers and middle schoolers. Then we also do a 21-day scuba and sailing voyage for both high school and middle schoolers. And both of these programs, 12 and 21, are designed as introductory programs. You can come with no experience of diving, no experience of sailing, and get your basic certifications. So a really good option, depending on how much time you have, how long you want to be away, for the novice diver and sailor.
Next up, we have our sailing focused program. So these are our sailing intensive trips. We have a couple of different options. We have our 21-day advanced sailing voyage. This one, we like our students to have a little bit of experience coming into it, but that normally looks like some dinghy sailing or previous trips with families. We have then 12-day options available for both high school and middle school. And these are total intro programs. They're great for students that don't want to do diving but want to try out living on a boat, and we kind of focus on these programs on navigation, raising the sails, and all that sort of fun stuff on those trips. Then after that, we then have our Caribbean Marine Biology Voyage, 17-day program, a nice middle spot. This trip also has college credit on it, so students earn 2 college credits through this program, and they have a dedicated marine biologist on board their boat to teach them everything about marine biology, and the boat is kind of a floating classroom for those 17 days. We have a middle school version, no college credit, but it's just kind of a little intro into marine biology alongside the scuba diving on both programs for that one.
Great. Both of those marine biology, you can also have no experience with diving. You'll learn certainly on the trip. For those that are already certified, we have a bunch of advanced scuba options. For high schoolers, there's a couple of advanced scuba voyages, both in the Leeward Islands out of St. Martin and going around the islands there, and then one that starts down in St. Lucia or Grenada and follows kind of the islands down there. So a bit more remote diving for that one. We also offer that one from middle school, so going down to the Windwards. That is an alumni only scuba voyage. It's a great trip. And then we also have the middle school version in the Leeward Islands, starting in St. Martin and going around. New for 2022, which I'm very excited about. It's been a long time in development by PADI, but they've just released their Junior Dive Master program, which is really exciting. It's designed for those who have already got their advanced and rescue certifications and want to go on and do a bit more, but aren't quite 18 yet, can't do the full DM cert. So if you are already, you have your rescue and your advanced, something to consider might be the Junior Dive Master certification. So I'm very excited about that one. Love to talk about that one. Okay, so that's a vague, just a brief overview of our programs. It's definitely there's definitely more information on the website, and we certainly can help you select a program from those based on your interests and how much time you might have. But we just wanted to go more in depth about some of the frequently asked questions we get that you might not get from the website information. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is about travel and arrival day, traveling to the program. How do you get there? Where do you get there? To where do you arrive? And what's arrival day like? First of all, our destination, or the starting point and the ending point for most of our Caribbean voyages, is St. Martin. So SXM is the airport code. It's the international airport on the island of St. Martin. We have a base on the French side of St. Martin, and on arrival day, we will meet students at the airport. As soon as they come out through customs and baggage claim, we'll be there to meet them. We do give you guys a t-shirt to wear on travel day. Some people may already have received it in the mail, so that you can spot other people who are on your flight, and we can spot you in the airport. Very often on those flights from the US, there are other Broadreach students on those flights, and you'll spot them as you're traveling. The main flights down to St. Martin leave from New York, Miami, Atlanta, Charlotte, places like that. So it's relatively easy to get to St. Martin. And like I say, we'll pick you guys up straight as soon as you arrive in St. Martin. We then have, like I said, a base on the French side, and we will bring all the students to there. You can see a nice picture of our base. It looks lovely there. And students on arrival day, one of the first things we'll do is have them call home so that you know that they've arrived and that they're safe. We'll then get them fitted up for some dive gear. We usually feed them a meal, some kind of food, because everyone's hungry after travel day. And from then, before it gets dark, we'll go out to the boat, and that's where the adventure begins, really. They spend even from the first evening on the boat with the rest of their group. We have a great logistics team in St. Martin. One of the things we like is it's not just the instructors, as a whole behind the scenes team who help out with that kind of arrival day logistics. And so we've got it down to a fine art, I think, and it usually goes fairly smoothly. We're also available in the HQ office for anything that might happen on travel day that requires a bit more attention. So don't forget to give us a call if you need to.
Wanted to talk a little bit about what our boats are like. Each summer is a varied question we answer a lot here in the office. So we have two different types of boat. You notice on one side we have our catamaran. This is the boat that all of our diving programs is based on. They're generally around 42 to 45 foot, and that is their home for the duration of the program. On board these boats, we have about 4 to 6 cabins and around 4 heads, so 4 bathrooms on board the boat. They live on this boat for the duration of the program. Like we said, all the cooking, meals and everything happen on here. I would say they get off the boat probably every 2 to 3 days for some sort of activity. And during the program, this is their floating home. So they'll travel between the different islands, learn how to sail their boat, and just generally learn what boat life is like. The second boat that we have is our monohull. These boats are around 50 foot, and we use these for our sailing intensive programs, but not for middle school. Middle school is still based on a catamaran. So high school sailing intensive programs are monohulls. There again, there's 4 to 5 cabins on board, and they live on it for the duration of their program, and it really gives the traditional sailing experience. So you feel the boat heel over in the wind, and the students that kind of spray as well, which is always lovely. And that's kind of how they learn their sailing experience on board that boat. And they'll learn how to do everything on board that boat, from raising the sails to anchoring it to mooring it at the end of the evening. So that's a little bit about our boats in general. A big question, another one we have, is where do we sleep on these boats? So like I mentioned, there are cabins on board. We generally assign students to a cabin when they first arrive with us. But that cabin tends to be somewhere where they just store their belongings rather than sleeping. The cabins can get quite hot and stuffy. So most of our students will choose to sleep outside. It's a pretty cool experience also to sleep under the stars, and it's sort of like a slumber party feel on board the boat. A really popular spot that you can see is that trampoline kind of netting area at the front. The breeze is lovely. And there's also, a couple of them can all kind of bunk on there together. There's also sofas around, and some of our students will choose to sleep in hammocks too. It's kind of personal preference. I'm not really a hammock sleeper, but I do enjoy the trampoline, especially on board the boats. Students can choose to sleep in those cabins if they want to. It's definitely set up for that if that is kind of where they like. We normally find within the first couple of nights, students kind of find their spot, and that's theirs for the duration of the program, and they stick to it. They find where they like. That's about our sleeping. Do you have a favorite spot there?
Oh, I do like to be out under the stars. I think it's one of the novelties of being on a boat. It's certainly something you can't really do anywhere else. So I like it a lot. I like the breeze, for sure. Yeah. We also get obviously a lot of questions about what we eat on board our boats. the good news is that we are in control of what we're eating because the students are doing most of the cooking under the supervision of their instructors. But students on a rotation, they have cook teams that they rotate through, but they're all responsible for helping prepare meals. And we have a fairly easy set of recipes that have a lot of crowd pleasers in them, and we can accommodate most people's tastes. We eat a lot of kind of fresh vegetables and things. We eat a lot of kind of pasta and rice dishes because we need lots of energy for our busy days. We always have snacks available so that students can snack between meals. I know diving makes me hungry, and so having plenty of options for that sort of thing. And of course, they're all teenagers, so that's definitely keeping them fed is very important to us. Any dietary restrictions or requirements we can usually accommodate. Vegetarian is very common. We even get some vegan students, gluten-free, lactose, all sorts of things. So we're always happy to answer questions about accommodating dietary requirements as well. And we also love cake too. We think cake is very important as part of a thing, and especially if there's a birthday, or even sometimes if there's not, we love to have cake as well. The good news for students is that they're also responsible not only for cooking, but for keeping the boat tidy and clean. And that includes doing your dishes and cleaning up after meals too. One of the responsibilities that we give you on your trip is keeping the boat shipshape. And that's all part of the learning experience, is learning about keeping that boat clean. So that's one of the things that you'll do as a student, as well as cooking, is the cleanup afterwards as well. And we have definitely had a few cool dance parties as part of cleanup of an evening. I'm sure Fran has too.
So many.
So I think the other questions we get asked are, it's not just all about sailing and diving. What other activities do we do on the programs that we run? Obviously, they're diving, sailing focused, marine biology, if that's what you're doing, but we do take the opportunity to do other activities as well. Like Fran said, we go on land every so often as well to do things like hike. We have a few hikes that we love to do. Sunrise hike is always really popular. We'll go up the Quill, this dormant volcano in Statia. It's always cool. We are lovers of games. We love playing games on the beach, sometimes with other boats. A bit of friendly rivalry is always cool. We do some small boat sailing. You can see there they're doing like pico sailing or the smaller boats that give you an idea of how the wind works and really get a feel for what sailing a monohull is like. And we also do water sports as well. We have a couple of water sports boats that go out. You can have a go at wakeboarding, water skiing, tubing. They also do a bit of tubing, and we usually have a paddleboard on every boat, so you can also either hang out on it or do some paddle boarding. I know we just like to kind of hang out on the paddleboard sometimes, but we also have a paddle so you can paddle around the bay too. Yeah. On our programs as well, it's not pictured here, but we do community service. So we do some service on a couple of the islands that we visit, usually with the local marine park or conservation society. Some of our students will go and help clean the coral nursery. We do a lot of trail maintenance and kind of beach cleanups for them, and learn about kind of the environment that we're in and from some of the local people. So that's also an element that we build into all the programs as well. Lots of things.
Calling home and communication is another big thing for us. We think it's really important that students have phones with them during the travel days, so they can contact at home, and they can also contact us if they have any problems. And like Claire mentioned, when they arrive with us, we'll make sure they call home and speak to one of you guys so that you know that they're here, safe and sound, and with us. From their first night, we kind of do a check-in with each student. And part of that check-in is that we take the SIM cards from the students' phones. So they still have the phone to take photos, listen to music, set alarms, all of that stuff, but it kind of gives them a step back from social media and that connectivity that phones give us these days. It's a really great part of our program that often the students end up loving, is that kind of step back from social media and to really focus on where they are and what is happening around them, and also making new friends with who their crewmates are. But however, go with that, we do calls home once a week. So students will call home. It's often though that when they head into town during the program, they'll also get Wi-Fi. So it's more than likely that they'll contact home more than once during that time. So they can contact you, let you know what they're up to. And there's no limitation on that phone call. So they can call and chat for however long they need. We also then do trip updates every day. So one of the students on board the boat will write a blog post which will get sent out to everyone, all the families of the students. So you can kind of follow along with what they're doing. And to go along with that, there'll be photos as well from the day. There isn't Wi-Fi on board our boats, however, so they really are disconnected from the world. However, if you ever need to get in contact with your student, we here in Broadreach HQ are here 24/7 throughout the summer. So all you'd need to do is call and we can get in touch with our team in the Caribbean. The same way, if your student wanted to call home, they just want to check in and let you know what they're up to. All they need to do is ask their instructors and they can make that phone call. So it's not a hard rule that they can only call once. We just make sure that they do call at least once a week to check in.
Yeah. And then I think this is an important question, and what we get a lot is what is our approach to safety and risk management, and kind of how we deal with safety and are our programs safe. And I think it's important to know, obviously, we're taking safety very seriously. It's our #1 priority for students and staff is to be safe. And I think we're really good at making these potentially risky activities as safe as possible. When we're diving and sailing, because we are dealing with teenagers and people's kids, we are generally very conservative with respect to the limits that we're encountering with diving limits, and also when we're sailing as well. There's a lot of different aspects to safety and risk management, and it starts, our staff are experts in their fields, in sailing, diving, but also in outdoor travel and international travel, dealing with students. They all have, most of them have experience in that sort of thing and have done this before. And we are also getting the students involved too. And I think this picture of a girl putting a lot of sunscreen on while wearing a PFD is a good example of how students can also help with their manage their risk. We're getting them to, right from the start, to think about and hold each other accountable for things like putting sunscreen on, hydration, and wearing a PFD. Yeah, it is good to know. We're always happy to talk more in depth about more specific safety concerns or safety issues. Just know that we have a lot of experience, and we do have a lot of different plans that range from sort of everyday things to more serious events. So we know where our resources are in advance, and we're constantly thinking about that and how we can keep everybody safe. Well, yeah, that's all our frequently asked questions. We get a lot of the time, and so I think it's time for Q&A, isn't it, Bethany?
Yes. So we've got already some questions that have been submitted here. Some of them we already answered, but one question is, do you need to be PADI certified for the program? So I know you mentioned it, but just to reiterate.
Yeah, a lot of our programs don't require the PADI certification already. Those introductory programs I mentioned. The only ones where you have to already be open water certified are the advanced diving programs. So the advanced in the leewards or the windwards, and then obviously the junior dive master has a fair few other requirements as well. Yeah, but we have programs that you can do without having any experience at all.
A question, so we talked about airport pickup, or but how does it work on the other way when kids leave to go back home? How does drop off work?
Yeah, that's a good question.
We mentioned, so we have that big logistics team based in Caribbean, and part of their role is getting students to the airport at the end of their program. So we make sure they are all there. There's no real required departure time, but we get them to the airport and we'll get all of our students checked in and through security, and there's then a member of staff at the airport until all of the flights leave for the day. So if there's ever any problems or anything like that, they are there to help for that.
Okay, here's another question about the vaccine, asking about whether vaccination includes both booster or just the 2-dose course of like the Pfizer or Moderna.
That is a good question. Yeah, I know that St. Martin consider people fully vaccinated if they are within a year of their second shot. So if you were kind of fully vaccinated within the last year or within the last year of when you're traveling, they still consider you fully vaccinated. And after that, they kind of require a booster to consider you fully vaccinated. So it does depend a little bit on when you got your shots.
Yeah, and again, if you have questions about your specific situation, then feel free to give us a call so we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Here's one talking about the middle school diving. How deep do the students dive on the middle school scuba and sailing trip?
That is a good question, and it depends on certification level a little bit. The open water divers will never go beyond 60 feet because that's the first level of certification. So a novice diver will gradually work their way up to potentially 60 feet. They don't just go straight down there, they'll work up to that or down to that. And then for middle schoolers who are under 15, the very maximum they can go in the advanced course is 70 feet. So that would be a maximum for anyone under 15.
How many students and staff total would be on each boat?
Great. We take a maximum of 12 students on each of our programs, and that really depends on enrollment. So sometimes we level out at around 10. It just kind of depends how popular that set of dates are. We then have 3 instructors on each program. One will be your skipper, so in charge of the boat and everything sailing related, and you'll then have 2 dive instructors on board on any of our diving programs. If it's a non-diving program, it is a little bit different. We have a skipper, and then there'll be a first mate on board those trips. And marine biology, again, you have a marine biologist on board, but generally 2 to 3 staff on each program.
Okay, seasickness. Do kids often get seasick, and how do you handle it when they do?
Yes, I think is the honest answer to that. Students do sometimes get seasick, and I myself have felt it too. I will say that we deliberately run our programs on catamarans because they are so stable. It really the only time where students feel a little bit seasick is between crossings between islands. There are a lot of different ways to handle that. Normally getting them up and active, so getting them involved in the sailing really takes their mind off it and can help. And just being out in the open, fresh air as well. If that doesn't help, we do have seasickness medication on board that students can take. But we generally find after the first couple of days, they find their sea legs, they get used to it, and it becomes more comfortable for them. And then every night, the boats are moored or anchored in very calm, tranquil bays. So they really don't move very much. And they're very stable for that time. So it normally is only when the boat is actively sailing that it's a problem for anyone.
Great. Okay, so for 12-day programs, specifically middle schoolers, but this would apply to high schoolers as well, will all students receive an official PADI certification after completing a 12-day program?
Yeah, they should do, as long as they've managed to complete all the knowledge and the academics and the practical things. Very occasionally, someone might not complete the course for whatever reason, but yeah, the idea is that most of them will get their PADI open water or on a 12-day. If they come already certified, they'll work on their advanced.
So as far as program dates and travel, if a program is June 27th through July 17th, would they need to arrive on June 27th and book the return flight on the final day of the program that's listed?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we consider the first day of the program the travel day. So to make it easy, yeah, if you see June 27th, that's the day that they should arrive in St. Martin. And likewise, the end of the program, say July 17th, that's the travel day as well. So you should plan to leave those days. Yeah.
Again, if you have specific questions about your circumstance, then feel free to give us a call.
Yeah, for sure.
This is another one we get a lot. Do students tend to come alone or in groups who already know one another?
That's a great question that we hear pretty often. I would say the majority of our students do come alone to these programs. It's a great experience in learning independence, but also making new friends. We do often have some students that will bring a friend with them, especially for our younger groups. So middle schoolers, it can be quite a comfort to both the student and families that they have a friend with them. But in general, we really recommend that those students that bring a friend are really actively making friends with other students on their boat. And that is something that we'll push and we'll make them aware of ahead of time. But I would say the majority of our students do come alone. So that's something that's great. I think it's a really great experience for them in general to be alone on one of these adventures.
Yeah.
Right. Have you ever been forced to reschedule or head into dockage based on bad weather in the past?
Yeah, very occasionally we might encounter sort of a tropical storm that comes through and have to bring the boats back into the marina or a safe harbor that we have around dotted around the Caribbean. We know where those are. And for storms in the Caribbean, it's usually about 24 hours and they blow through. And yeah, we're prepared to do that under those circumstances. The great thing about being on a boat is you can be very flexible in your itinerary. So we find that it doesn't usually impact the schedule that much. We can just carry on after the storm has passed, and we usually find some good activities on land that we can do as an alternative. So yeah, tweaking the itinerary is something that is very possible and what we like about these programs. Yeah,
I would say another great note about weather is we are monitoring it constantly throughout the summer, both our skippers here at HQ and our team in the Caribbean. And so that means that we know about any weather or any tropical storms way ahead of time. So we're normally planning if something like that is going to happen, like a week out. And normally most of the time it peters out and it never actually becomes something. But we are like monitoring that so far in advance that we can make good plans for all of our boats.
Great. That was the last question. If anyone has any final ones. Oh, one more. If anyone else has any ones, go ahead and start typing. How often do you have a student who wants to go home in the middle of the trip, and how is that handled?
We very occasionally have a student who finds it's not for them or they are missing home. There's the normal kind of homesickness that comes up in the first 48 hours, I would say. Usually that's fairly normal, and working with the student to kind of get used to the situation they're in and overcome that is something that we're quite used to doing. We definitely would be in contact with a family about an individual student who was still expressing homesickness way into the trip, and just handling on a case-by-case basis I think is probably the best answer to that. We are experienced in kind of handling students who maybe find themselves wanting to go home, and definitely working with them on an individual level is something we can do along with their families back home to have a good outcome for everybody. Yeah.
All right.
Some great questions.
That was, yeah, amazing questions.
The last one? Yeah.
Yeah, that was the last one we have.
Great. Well, if anyone does have any other questions, you can see our email addresses right there. Those are our direct email addresses. So if you have anything you want to ask when we are gone, feel free. Like I said, all the programs that we talked about are on the website there, and there's always kind of giving us a call here in Raleigh to chat on the phone. Another thing we like to do is also Zoom. We do a lot of Zoom calls these days with both parents and students themselves. Always love to hear questions from students and find out what they're interested in and how excited they are about the program. So that's always an option for a family Zoom too.
Yeah, so feel free to give us a call if you have any other questions, send us an email, and thank you for sharing your evening with us.